North Carolina has always had a rich musical heritage, and we're proud to be a part of such a great treasure.
Join Brooke and I as we talk to some of our favorite musicians, some good friends from our home state of North Carolina. Hear their story and see how bluegrass music has shaped their lives and their career. Hello, folks, and welcome to another portion of the Carolina Sessions here with Darin and Brooke Aldridge, and got our good friend from Valdese, North Carolina, Mr. Ron Shuffler. How you doing this morning, Ron?
I'm doing good, Darin. How are you?
I'm doing great during this time of surprise and everything else that might happen in 2020. It's been an interesting year for us musicians, hasn't it, pal?
I'll say it has. Never seen anything like it. I worry about our musician friends. Of course, we wish them all the best, but it's a tough time for a lot of them. I hate that.
It sure is, man. When I talked to you earlier this week, you said you had got to perform a few things this summer, and you'd been out with High Fidelity, maybe playing out west. Is that right?
Yes, we flew out to Phoenix. That was actually the end of last year.
Okay.
Yeah, and we did a festival out there, Doyle Lawson and Special C, Kenny and Amanda. It was great.
Yeah.
And came back and did Spigma and did a few gigs, and then it got bad, you know.
Got bad,
and
yes, sir.
Just done a couple of things locally since then. It's
right.
Usually, of course, this is prime time for everybody right now, you know.
Yep, it's
and
the legs to be swept out from under us, hasn't it, pal?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll press on, and maybe things will start happening through the winter and next year, and the music will always survive no matter what. Ain't that right?
That's true. Yeah.
Well, pal, tell me about when you started playing. I know several of your older brothers have been playing music, and had a big stamp on the music just like yourself. But tell me about when you was a youngster, about how you kind of got started in the music business and all that.
Yeah. Of course, I'm out of a big family. I'm the youngest of 9, 6 boys and 3 girls.
Wow.
Everybody played music. Girls played piano, and the boys played most everything during their time of playing.
Uh-huh.
Of course, George being the oldest, George is 20 years my senior, and he was playing on the Opry before I was born.
Yeah.
Playing with the Bailey Brothers.
Wow.
Grand Ole Opry. And that, of course, was before the Stanley Brothers.
Now, was George playing bass or guitar? Or?
He was playing bass.
Okay.
As I understand it, yes. And although he did play some guitar, I've got a picture of him from 1942 standing behind the Opry microphone playing Grandpa Jones's Triple Alt 45, I think.
Wow.
That would have been about 1942.
Uh-huh.
So I think he played maybe some of both with them. But then he came back and hooked up with the Stanley Brothers probably in the around 1950 maybe.
Yeah.
And of course, Brother John did a stint or two with the Stanleys and recorded some with them.
And he was playing bass, right?
He played bass, absolutely. But there at home, it was sort of like a community center for musicians. We had a big farmhouse. Mom and Dad had a bedroom to themselves at the other end of the house from our what we call the living room. And it was like a who's who of musicians came through that living room.
Uh-huh.
Many of them you'll remember, people like Herb Lambert, Jimmy Buchanan, great fiddle player. By the way, Jimmy, where I'm sitting in my home, Jimmy was raised about a quarter mile east of here. And Herb Lambert lived a good part of his adult life about a quarter mile west of here.
Wow.
And so I'm in a good neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
But those guys, you and I had talked about Chubby Anthony. Chubby would come up from Cherryville there, close to you, and either play fiddle or banjo. played great on both of them.
Yeah.
Jim Shoemate would come up and fiddle. Hoyt Herbert, great banjo player, of course.
Yeah. From Avery County.
Yeah.
Side of Newland there.
Yeah. Tiny and Pee Wee Davis.
Yeah.
Played fiddle and banjo. Great musicians. And you mentioned Avery County. Kent Wiseman, the great banjo player, would come down. Kent was killed in an automobile accident while he was in a band with Brother John.
Really?
Yep. And Johnny and Betty Barrier. Did you ever know them?
I didn't.
Oh, man. They were great singers. He played dobro, she played guitar. And they're from Jonas Ridge there, actually,
Right.
Avery County. Herb Green, great singer from up there. My, could he sing?
Yeah, man, he could.
The great Raymond Fairchild. Raymond was working in Morganton for Breeden's Poultry, and they would bring him down, and he would play, and became great friends there. And of course, he went on and had a great career.
Sure did.
But he would come often. I'm just skimming over some of the players, but that went on. That was a constant that there would be jam sessions, and some of them powerful stuff. L.W. Lambert was another one that come up, played banjo, of course. Blue River Boys.
A lot of folks have really, since we've been doing these sessions, talked about what an influence that L.W. and Herb and the Blue River Boys. I know you mentioned Herb Green. I know he played with them, and
he did.
My old pal Harold Murphy as well. And
oh yeah,
talked a lot about that. And just, man, that was just a great group of musicians and guys there. Had a band that really influenced a lot early on.
Yeah. So always music there in the home, of course, and me and the two brothers next to me, Joe and Paul, or we call him Gus, we played, we were rock and rollers. And Brother Dude, his real name was Bill. The four of us played rock and roll, and we'd play that in order to get money to buy our Bluegrass albums,
There you go.
And then we'd always jam Bluegrass, but we got into some pretty serious playing. Charlotte had a strong music union at the time. I don't know if it's still that active or not, but we were in the music union, and we used to book an agent out of Charlotte, Hit Attractions, Hit Hall. And so we played colleges 9 months out of the year. I was going to college and working, and but we played actively. And we had an old bus, and we'd beat the roads. We had like a 7-piece band, the 3 horns and the B3 Hammond organ and the whole bit. And we played behind a lot of groups a lot of black groups, for example, that would just carry a lead singer and maybe one, what they would call a band leader, somebody that would usually play piano or guitar. And we played behind the Drifters, and Barbara Lewis, great female singer, Mary Wells was another that they had hit songs during that time. Clifford Curry, Major Lance, and others, and that would typically be in clubs as opposed to a frat party. But we played frat parties for years, and then we'd get home, and on Sunday you go to a bluegrass festival like Reidsville or one of those good ones. Back then Toe River had some festivals, had some good festivals. So that went on, and then we went through the country phase.
Oh yeah.
Had a country band called Cornrows. It was a pretty strong band. Gloria Coffey sang in that group. You might remember Gloria.
I remember the name coming around. Yes.
She was an awesome singer. And then Patrick Crouch and Reggie Harris and I started a trio. We were doing like Django stuff.
Right.
And Reggie was like 18. Of course, I know you're friends with Reggie.
Oh yeah.
Incredible guitar player. And we would do takeoffs on like newgrass and traditional bluegrass, that sort of thing. We played some shows with Doc Watson and Vassar Clemens and different ones. And so through this time, of course, I was working. I was a plant manager and or an engineer through those years. And I sort of did my playing backwards as far as bluegrass is concerned. So I took an early out in '99, and I started traveling and playing with some different groups with Dale Ann Bradley and Michael Cleveland. I did parts of 3 seasons with Michael, and
yeah, I mean,
and had some great opportunities to play with some of the greatest players that you could imagine. And so I've had a great time playing, of course.
Yeah, we met probably back in the mid '90s, I guess, maybe '97 or '96, and you was around with a lot of folks during that time, and been blessed to get to know you in your area there since way back when. Like you said, it's got a whole lot of musicians in that area, you know, with around the Harris brothers there in Lenore and Morganton. I know with, you mentioned David Wiseman and but David there being a musician, him and his son, and of course Dale Myers and Mike Ramsey and all those guys and around the Morganton area that we've got to know and pick from, that we all call each other family, you know. But yeah, man, back to Reggie there a little bit. Did you play a lot of music with his dad as well?
No, I knew his dad, Charles.
Charles.
I knew the family since Reggie and Ryan were just little guys, you know. Their uncle, Cecil Palmer.
Right.
Cecil, I call him the father of our music. He taught us all to play guitar. I played in a band with Cecil in 69 and 70. And it was sort of a pop band with country flavor to it. Dawn Owens was a great singer. She sang in that group. Yeah. And so I got to know Reggie and his family through his uncle, Cecil. And Cecil is 86 and still plays most every day.
Yeah, he's a great
great Chet Atkins style, play any style of guitar, but he's studied it all these years, and he's phenomenal in what he knows and he's very generous with it.
He sure is.
He was a big influence on Reggie, on Jarrett Carter and Patrick Crouch, myself, anybody else that wanted to learn. He was the man. His home was always open, and he had a big picking room downstairs. And Cecil was a night person. He'd like to start playing around midnight, 10 p.m. to midnight, and play till 3 or 4 in the morning. You know.
Yeah.
Still does.
I know it. I've been up there several times when all that's taking place.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. Strangely enough, he and Brother George, and you remember Carolina Ray Wisnett.
Oh yeah, Carolina
singing
Ray.
Troubadour. Carolina traveled and sang as a troubadour, and we, of course, he passed last year. We had his funeral and played some music there. But he knew so many songs, but he and Cecil and Brother George and one other guy, Kirby guy, played some shows when George was home, probably in the late 50s. And they would open shows in Lenore, Lenore American Legion, for groups like Reno and Smiley, the Leuven Brothers, the Porter Wagner Show, and several others. And they'd sell the place out, you know. It was big doings back then. I remember going, and the Leuven Brothers were there, and it snowed. And Ray was a fireman there in Lenore at the time. so they came down to the firehouse and jammed into the wee hours. You know, they were afraid to leave town. There was 3 or 4 or 5 inches of snow by then, I guess.
Yeah.
So some good memories there.
I bet so, man.
Yeah. Some of the other influences around home was like when George was playing with the Stanley Brothers, they would come and stay at our home when they were passing through. And sometimes the entire band would.
Yeah.
And I would have been probably an early teenager, and they would just about have to get out a straitjacket for me. I would be beside myself, you know.
I bet so, man.
And Carter Stanley, he was the man. He was just fun to be around. He was always on. He'd either have written a song or be writing a song or thinking about a song. We did some shows with him, like at the Cat Square Opry there in Lincoln County, you know.
Oh, yeah. That's not
That
far
was a
from
big
home.
deal. Yeah, used to play there, and they had Flatt and Scruggs, the Osborne Brothers, Jim and Jesse, Stanley Brothers, and I played behind some country acts there when I was like 18, behind Jeannie Shepherd and different ones, you know. And that's once again, she brought Jackie Phelps as her guitar player, was the only musician she brought, so you'd get an opportunity to play with some big names at that time. You know, this was early 60s.
Wow.
Maybe 62, 63.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty cool. But yeah, the Stanley Brothers would stay there, and it was always a special occasion for me. And I never will forget that, you know.
Yeah, well, your brother George, he brought a lot to the table, I think, to their sound, you know, and they just had a great package with Ralph's singing harmony and lead singing, and of course Carter and his writing. But you know, George made a big stamp on what he brought to the table too. Can you tell us a little bit about that, or did he ever discuss a lot of that with you on his guitar style and how his cross picking come to about?
A bit. Of course, he played bass with them for years.
Yeah.
And he even recorded mandolin on a couple songs with him,
Really?
I think. Yeah. Maybe the Flood. Maybe one of those was the Flood in particular.
Uh-huh.
So he, of course, he always played guitar at home. A little history there. Before the Stanley Brothers, George, brother John, played bass. Lester Woody, the great fiddle player, lived right below us. We were down a dirt road at that time. The home place, which was close to the Catawba River.
Uh-huh.
And Lester played with the Stanley Brothers, played fiddle with them. He cut the White Dove and some of that with the Stanleys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they had a group, George and John, Lester Woody, and a fellow named Curly Williams, Merritt Williams, and he was a local guy, and he passed recently, and so did Lester. But they were doing country swing music, and George was playing guitar in front of the group, and they had great harmonies, and they had a big radio show on Hickory, WIRC, I believe, in Hickory. And so then he got hooked up with the Stanleys. Maybe he subbed in with them, and they hired him. And so later, I guess people will date things by when Elvis became popular, and Bluegrass really struggled.
Yes.
So it pretty much came down to George and Carter and Ralph, and they would try to pick up a bass player and that sort of thing. And George developed that style. First, let me back up and say that George played with Jim and Jesse when they were playing out of Asheville. This was before the Stanley Brothers also. So they were playing out of Asheville, and they played radio there, and then they would go out and play courthouses and high schools and drive-in theaters. And but George said they lived there in the hotel, and I believe it was the Caldwell Hotel in Asheville, which was probably long gone. But he said he and Jesse would sit there, and he'd play guitar, and Jesse would play mandolin, and they'd work on these roads, you know. And Jesse does it one way, and George did it the other.
Uh-huh.
And but they were very similar. It comes off quite similar, and so that's where the cross picking sort of got started as far as George's playing. And then with the Stanleys, he said with three of them, they wanted something to sort of fill in and something different, and so he would play that. And he said Carter really took a liking to it and said, you need to do more of that. And so it you know, it ended up on a lot of recordings and that sort of thing.
Sure, yeah.
And so that's sort of what I recall about part of the history of that.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Did was you at the first Bluegrass Festival over there at Camp Springs?
Yes. Now, of course, the first festival, as I recall, was at Fincastle,
Right,
Virginia.
Virginia.
And Stanley's played there. I wasn't there, but yes, at Reidsville I would go there. Usually on Sunday I'd be playing.
Yeah.
But some of us would go to Reidsville and saw some great acts there. Osborne Brothers, that's when they were just smoking hot. And after George played with the Stanley Brothers, he finished up with Reno and Harold.
Oh, yeah.
67, 68. He played bass with them, and then he played guitar with them. So I became friends with Ronnie Reno as a result of that. When we were both young and single, we'd run around some when he'd come through and go see his mother in South Carolina, and we became friends. So when Ronnie left Reno and Harold, Jerry McCurry came in and played bass, and George went to guitar with them. And he stayed a couple of years, and then that was the last real heavy road work that he did.
Uh-huh.
But that was some good music. They had Buck Ryan playing fiddle, and they had what I really thought was a great group. And of course, Reno could carry a show, and Bill Harrell's singing was one of my favorite ballad singers was Bill Harrell, always. Yeah. And so Reidsville, Ronnie had just gone with the Osborne Brothers, and I'd go down and hang out with him, and those guys were just smoking. They were so good. And I got to see the Country Gentleman there right when Bill Emerson left, and Doyle played banjo that day and played it well.
Right.
I think maybe they picked up Jimmy Goodrow to play mandolin, and that may be correct, I think. But
Ricky might have been playing mandolin at that time. Ricky and
that particular day, well, it's possible. But anyway, I recall distinctly Doyle on the banjo.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of those pictures.
Did you?
In the fire.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, Jimmy Martin would be there, and Carlton would do the history of bluegrass, so to speak. And
for sure.
That was great stuff. I also got to see that at Berryville, there on the river. That was good stuff. They had they had Benny Martin come out, you know, and on and on. And Monroe was there on the Sunday. They had it was a who's who, actually, pretty major.
Yes, sir. Was you around Monroe quite a bit during any of those times?
Just a few times. Got to meet him, and he was a force, of course, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I got to meet a lot of those guys, actually. But Monroe, he's usually pretty busy around the festival. You know how that goes, but
Yeah, everybody
he'd,
flocking to him. And
he'd always take time and talk. George was a big horse man. He always had horses. And of course, Monroe did. He had King Wilkie and all that, you know.
yeah,
He liked walking horses in particular, riding horses. And so they had that in common. That was a common bond with them. They'd always discuss that.
yes.
Ralph Stanley was another he always had livestock, either cattle or horses.
Uh-huh.
I saw the time when, like I say, when times were hard, George had a nice pickup that he would, you could haul a couple of horses in or cattle. And actually, Ralph paid him a couple of times in livestock when times were hard.
Wow.
Sure did.
How about that?
But George always said if Ralph owed you a nickel, you got paid. But
You got it.
it's never ever a problem, you know.
Yeah. That's pretty wild, man.
Yeah.
There in your area, we've talked a lot, and it's been jamming and stuff going on, and you've been there a whole lot. Was over at Drexel at the barber shop. There's been a lot of music played there, hadn't they, man?
Oh yeah, yeah. Great place. You and I both thought the world of Herb Lambert, and he's the king of mandolin players, more especially Monroe style. And he would lead the jams there, and you've been there, you know. But you'd get to play 200 instrumentals on a good day. You know, he'd go on for it, and he knew them all. He knew them all, and
Yeah.
you didn't know it. If you didn't know them, he'd teach them to you.
Yeah, he taught me quite a few mandolin tunes over the years.
Yeah, he was another one that was he was very generous. You know, Dempsey Young, he talked about Herb showing him stuff when he first began playing mandolin.
Wow.
Herb was with the Blue River Boys, and Dempsey said he would just stop everything to show you something if you had a question. And I always thought that was real special. And Dempsey was another great player that I love to hear. But that was Herb. He loved the music. He'd get, when he was in his 80s, you'd be jamming and he would get so excited like a kid, you know. And I always thought, man, if I live that long, I just hope I can have that kind of excitement about music.
Yeah, and still kept him young, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Those years, man. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, Ron, you've over the years too, you've been a great person that's traded and bought, and you know, you could call you about instruments, basses, guitars. You've got a great knowledge in that. Ever since I first met you, you know, we've always talked, and I've tried to collect things over the years. But
oh yeah,
if anybody comes up and talks about a certain thing, you know, you get pointed in your direction. There, people do a lot of times. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? I know you've sold a bunch of instruments and basses, you know, down through the years.
Yeah, I enjoy that. I still do. Got to meet a lot of great people doing that. It's our family. We were traders. We'd trade livestock. We'd trade real estate, cars, trucks, tractors.
Mm-hmm.
And I got into the instrument thing, and I just have a fascination with more especially vintage instruments.
Yeah.
Getting extremely hard to even find this day and time, but I know you have some great ones. You've accumulated some good stuff.
Yeah, I've been blessed to find a few under some rocks here and there.
Yeah.
Sure enough. It's been a good thing. Always something good to hear a story about an instrument or a guitar or a bass and where it come from. And now that you own it, or you owned it at one time, you know, as part of history, having that, you know, box or, you know, banjo or anything, so many people playing it and doing it. It's quite a good thing.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, nothing like it.
You mentioned Patrick Crouch a little while ago earlier in the conversation, and Patrick and I have been friends a long time. And man, what a musical family with him and his wife. But you've had a trio with them. How long probably now, man?
I believe we're in our 31st year.
31st. I was going to say 30 years, but strictly decent.
Yeah.
Name of y'all's trio.
Yeah. And we all play other jobs with other groups, of course, and sub in with groups and that sort of thing. But we still play. We have several things coming up. Have a pretty good October if it doesn't get canceled. We have a few things, but they're so versatile. Of course, both of them are music majors, and they play every day.
They do, man.
Yeah, they do a lot of good with music. They're big promoters of local music.
Yeah,
first and foremost.
Annual show every year, and I got to be a part of that, I guess, with Jared or something one time. The Caldwell County.
Oh yes,
the show.
I think we're in maybe our 21st year of doing that, and what it amounts to, it's a great venue to showcase talent from Caldwell County, which is the adjoining county to me, here in Burke County. But through those 21 years, I think something over 200 Caldwell County musicians have crossed that stage there at the Broyhill Center, which is a lovely, I think, 1,100 seat auditorium. And we always have a good turnout for it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a community type thing, which is great. But what I like so much about it is that so many people get to perform that otherwise wouldn't perform publicly necessarily,
Right.
Sort of a lot of living room pickers, I'd call them.
Right.
And they're usually excited to do that, and their family will come out, and get pictures, and we'll play behind them and try to provide support any way we can for those that want to perform, but some of them are super talents, by the way.
Yeah, they are.
So
it's a great show.
Kay and Patrick put so much work and so much time into that each year. It's quite extensive, but I wish each county could do that to highlight their musicians, much like y'all are doing in highlighting North Carolina musicians. I'm enjoying the series that you've started, and I expect big things from that.
Well, thank you much. There's a lot of stories to be told, and this will go down. A lot of people learn from years to go and years to come. I mean, things that happen and people and places. It's so much of a musical trail here in North Carolina, and you and your family definitely have been a big part of that for sure.
Well, it's fun to be a part of it. One of the many benefits from playing, more especially playing bluegrass, is the family of musicians that you get to meet and be a part of, and I just love that. I met so many wonderful people as a result of the music, and I'm sure you would say the same.
Absolutely, sure do. Well, one question we asked everybody, and we get a different take on it, but it all comes out kind of in the same result as an answer, is how would you kind of explain the Carolina style of music and bluegrass?
Well, it's a good question. A lot of it, of course, I think has a mountain flavor to it. When I think about Avery County and Ashe County, Watauga County, there's a lot to draw from. Then you think about the banjo side of it. We've got some of the greatest banjo players that's ever been. I know you've interviewed several of them already.
Yes.
And more to come, but you have to think about banjo when you think about North Carolina.
Sure.
But in general, I think we have provided our share of great musicians to bluegrass music. But I also think, you know, if you go to the West Coast, or I've toured in Canada, and I'm sure you have, you'll hear bluegrass bands, local bluegrass bands, if you will, like California or Washington State, or and they don't have the same definition of bluegrass that we have, you know.
Right.
First thing that's usually not as noticeable is the drive that we have in bluegrass.
Right.
Yeah, you gotta be up front with it, you know, and there's no slacking.
Yeah.
I think that's part of our definition of bluegrass. But
sure enough, and you know,
I appreciate those people and enjoy their music, but it's just not the same, you know.
that's right. Yeah, it's great music to all parts of the West Coast, and like you said, in Canada and even New England, everybody playing that good music. And but it's a different thing if you was born and raised or here in North Carolina, you know. And Earl set that standard early on, and some of the older clawhammer players too, from, you know, over in Mount Airy, and Jenkins and the two finger style players. And then Earl come along and just really laid it down, you know, that certain drive and that roll behind it. And of course, like you said, George doing the same thing with the Stanley Brothers, giving something else and another foundation that people have grown to learn to play like that and live that in their music. Man, it's really special. And a lot of folks always had said, and Charlie Waller used to say this when we was in the band, if you got at least one person out of the band from North Carolina, you're going to be all right.
Yeah, that's great. I'll tell you,
you see that a lot in a lot of bands throughout, you know, that's been very successful, and, you know, just that special ingredients, you know, and that's proved in history. When Monroe got Earl in the band, it's like having dynamite, you know.
It's true. It's true.
Sure is. Well, man, we've enjoyed getting to talk to you today, and it's been a good conversation, a lot of history. I've always enjoyed getting to pick with you. You've picked with Brooke and I a couple times over the years, and we've seen each other out on the Bluegrass Trail and at festivals and here and there, and you've always been a great friend. We thank you for that, and thank you for
Yes, sir. I always enjoy your friendship and your music. Well, and certainly wish you all the best. And as we discussed, I'll be real pleased when this subsides and groups just like your fine group can get back out there and
we hope
and get busy. There's going to be
sometime, and the Old Rock School. We don't want to leave it out there. A lot of folks have played music there in your hometown at the Old Rock School. Oh
yes, great venue.
Yes, sir.
Great venue. I saw your show there last year, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Or was it early this year?
January of this year.
Exactly. What a great show. I really enjoyed that.
I miss seeing our good pal Dennis Jones up there, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Great supporter of bluegrass right there.
Sure was.
Yeah.
Another one to listen to and to talk to, and had just a world of knowledge just like yourself.
Yeah, man.
Well, folks, y'all check out Ron Shuffler and his brothers and his family. Me and Brooke recorded one of their songs, When He Beckons Me Home, on one of our live CDs, but they've got a great bunch of gospel music and just all that they've done in this music that we love called bluegrass. So thank you again, Ron, for joining us today on the Carolina Sessions.
Yes, sir. Good to see you, and thank you.
You too, buddy.
All right.